Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to do this pretty shawl, and I've done this shawl in very simple stitches. I've done 5 rows of clusters like a granny cluster, and then I've done a row of UK treble crochets, that's double crochets if you're in the USA. Then I've done another one with this little fillet stitch, and then another row of treble crochets just to break up this granny section. And look at this, it's absolutely beautiful. So simple, so easy. Just those two little sections. Now in the pattern I've got I've did an odd number, so I've done 5 rows of your granny stitch and 3 rows of that break up stitch to break it up a little bit. I've only done this size just now. I'm still working on this. I will do an updated video once I've got this as big as I want it to be. Now I'm using this yarn that I did a little video for that I got from McIntosh Yarns, and this yarn comes in a skein like this, and then you roll it up into a ball like that. And this is from McIntosh Yarns, and it's blue faced Leicester 100% sheep wool, and it is so soft. Now it's all hand dyed to order. If you like this, I'll put a link underneath the video. You can go onto the McIntosh website. Now, if you are going to order any yarn, make sure you order enough for the item that you're going to make, because this is all hand dyed and it's hand dyed to order. If you don't order enough and you need more, you might not get the same dye. I don't know what the word is. It won't be the same dye lot, if you know what I mean. It could be lighter or darker, and it might show up on your work. So what you need to do is make sure you order enough for the garment. If you're making a garment and it's 400 grams, make sure you order 400 grams. Or if it's 3 or 7, you know what I mean. Make sure you order enough for the item that you're going to make. This is hand dyed and it's called a semi-solid colour. So when it's dyed, it comes out in this semi-solid colour. It is a purple. This is lilac, sorry. It's this one is called My Tenderness. There's 24 colours in this range of the hand dyed semi-solid yarn. There's 24 colours. Some of it is dyed in a solid colour, and you've got these ones that come out like this. I think most of it comes out semi-solid. So as it dries, you get this beautiful hue. Look at this. It's a very visual texture. You can really see that soft change of colour. It's not what you would call your typical colour change where it starts and goes very solid, then goes to light, and then it's all mixed in, as you can see in this wool. It is 100% sheep's wool as well, and it is beautiful. It's so soft. It's not rough like a lot of other pure yarns. And look at this. So I'm going to show you how to do this. It's very simple. You can adjust it if you want. You can write it down as well. It's 8 rows, but 5 are made up with this clustered sort of granny stitch, and the other 3 is just this one to break it up. I was going to do just 2 rows of treble crochet, but I thought I would put that in the middle as well, just to help break it all up. And you'll start off down here, and then it works out the way. Make it as big as you want. You can make this for a neck warmer, or you can make it bigger for a shawl, and you could even make it even bigger for a lap blanket, or to throw over a chair or over a sofa. Use You can use any yarn you want for this. You don't need to use pure wool. You can use any yarn that you have, even scrap yarn. It is just a simple granny stitch and then this little ladder stitch in between. Then you can do it all granny if you want, or you can do all that if you want. It's really simple, really easy, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So if you're in the USA, these are double crochets for you and chains, and if you're in the UK, it's treble crochets and chains. So what you're going to start with is, I've got my yarn, and I'm going to do a chain of 5 stitches. Now I'm using my Lantern Moon inline crochet hooks. I'm using a number 4. You can use the hook size it tells you on the yarn that you are using. So I'm going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now those 4 stitches there become 1 UK treble and 1 chain. We're going to go into the first stitch down here in your chain, and you're going to put 3 trebles all together. That's UK trebles. If you're in the USA, these are double crochets, but in the UK it's treble crochets. It's the same stitch. So into that very first stitch that you done down here, you're going to put that through a little tight. So that's 1. We're doing clusters of 3. 1, 2 and 3. Now we're going to make the V part of the shawl. So we're going to chain 2 in the middle that splits your shawl into that V shape. You'll always have to. We'll have one corner. We'll call it a corner. We're going to have one corner and we're going to put 2 chain. 1 and 2. Now into that same stitch, do one more cluster of 3. And we're not finished there. So we're going to do 1, 2 and 3. Now we need to make this end the same as that end. Now those 4 stitches was 1 chain and the equivalent of 1 treble crochet. So we're going to do 1 chain and do 1 more treble crochet on its own into there. And that's us done the start of our shawl. So we're going to call that the corner, and the shawl is going to work in an inverted V shape. We're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. That counts as 1 UK treble crochet and a chain 1 stitch. Or if you're in the USA, that's a double crochet and a chain 1. Turn your work around. Now right into the chain stitch that's here, not the space. We're going into the chain 1 stitch and we're going to put a cluster in. So in to that chain 1 stitch. 1, build your cluster. 2 and 3 and chain 1. Now I'm calling it a cluster. When you do a granny stitch you go into the space, but we're putting these clusters into the stitch itself. You're going to skip over here to your corner. We're calling this our corner. There's only one in this shawl. So you've got 2 stitches in there. So into the stitch, not the space, into the stitch. In through that stitch, put a cluster. 1, 2 and 3. Chain 2 because it's our only corner. Now into the next stitch, that's the chain 2 stitches that we've done. Into the next stitch, put a cluster. Just into the stitch, not the space, because you want that space to look like a nice little round hole. So 1 into the stitch with your cluster. 2 and 3. And a chain 1. Now we're doing the chain 1s in between these sort of cluster granny type stitches so we can work into that chain 1. Skip this cluster here and we're going in. We've got 4 stitches here. We're going into the top stitch. So the stitch just past that cluster, you're going to put another cluster into the stitch. 1, 2, and 3. The noise you can hear is Muttley because there's children outside. So we're going to do a chain 1. Now into this chain here, you're going to put 1 into the next stitch down from that one there. So that's the top of that chain. Into there you'll put 1 treble crochet. And that's a double crochet if you're in the USA. Remember your chain 1 in between them all. And this is what we have. You should have 4 sets of clusters. So we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and turn. So into the chain, you're going to do your next cluster. Into the chain space, not the space, into the chain stitch. The chain 1 that you did. Put your cluster. We're going to do this till we've done 5 rows. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1, and then in to your next chain 1 stitch. Do your cluster. Into the chain 1 stitch. And it does make a nice difference. Rather than going into the space and cluttering it up, you get a nice space for your shawl. It adds to the pattern. 1, 2, and 3. Going to chain 1 and move in to the 2 stitches in your corner, into the 2 stitches in your corner. You're going to put 1 cluster first into the first stitch of that chain of 2. 1, 2, and 3. You're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then 1 cluster into the next stitch, not the space, into the stitch. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1 and move to the next chain 1 stitch into the stitch. Put your cluster in. Chain 1. Now at the end, you've got 4 stitches here that make up this corner. So into the first stitch, not the space, into the stitch, the top stitch, put your cluster. 1, 2, and 3. You're going to chain 1, and then into the next stitch, you're just going to put 1 treble crochet. So into that chain of 3 here, into the top stitch, put 1 stitch. And this is what helps to make your shawl grow. You're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and turn. Now into the chain stitch, put your cluster. 1, 2, and 3. So this is row 4. We've got 1, 2, 3, and this is row 4. You're going to chain 1 and just repeat that row there. So into the chain stitch, do your cluster and chain 1. Move over to your next chain stitch, do your cluster and chain 1. Now in the corner, this is your corner where you've got 2 together. It's 1 cluster, 2 chain and 1 cluster. Chain 1 and move over to the next chain stitch. Cluster, chain 1, move over to here. Now I'll work my way around to here and I'll show you one more time with these 4 stitches. So I'm at my I'm at my last 4 stitches again. So into the stitch next to there, I've done my chain 1. I'm going to put my last cluster into that chain 1, what's the equivalent of a chain 1 space. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Now I am left with my chain here, so into the top of that chain of 3. So at the end, you'll be using the last 2 stitches at the end. So we're going to put just one treble crochet in at the end. So you'll always finish with a cluster, a chain 1, and a treble crochet in those last 2 stitches. So again, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds. I'm going to do one more, just the same as that. So we'll start with a chain of 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now when you get to the end, you'll meet up with your other chain of 4 here. So it's these 2 stitches you're using at the ends. These 2 stitches that you're using at the end. So turn your work. Into the stitch, you do a cluster, chain 1, into the next, a chain stitch, cluster, chain 1, all the way along. When you get to your corner, you'll do a cluster in the stitch, chain 2, and a cluster in the next stitch. Chain 1 over to the next one, right along to the end. And there's your chain of 4 at the end. So into the top stitch of your chain, the 4th one, 1, 2, 3, into the 4th one, do a cluster, chain 1, and then 1 treble crochet into the next stitch. So that's the 3rd stitch in that chain. So you're using stitch 3 and 4 in those chains of 4 that we're doing. To chain 1, and then into the 3rd stitch in the chain, you're going to put 1 treble crochet, only 1. Now that's the 5 rounds done of the cluster stitch or the granny stitch. Now what you can do is you can continue with that and just do all in that stitch, but I'm going to break it up with a row of treble crochets, a row of treble crochet chain 1, and another row of treble crochets, just to break the pattern up a little bit. So we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to turn your work around. Now into that first chain stitch there, you're going to put 2 treble crochets. You're going to put 2, 1 and 2. This is to balance out your stitch count. And you're going to put 1 in all the way up. So 1 into each stitch in the cluster and 1 into the chain stitch all the way up. So I'm nearly at the top with row 6. And that's row 1 of the second section of the pattern. Now into the chains, this is the peak. I'm going to put 2 into this chain, the first chain, 1 and 2. I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2, and put 2 into the next chain of that peak, 1 and 2. Then 1 into each stitch all the way down. So at the end with your chain of 4, into the 4th stitch, you're going to put 2. 1 and 2. Now you're going to chain 1 and put 1 into the next stitch. Into that chain, you've got 3 chains left, into the 3rd one. Now you're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and turn. This is row 7, or it's row 3 of the second section. The second section has only got 3 rows in it, just to break up this cluster row. But you do 5 rows of cluster and 3 of a second section. That makes 8 rows altogether. So into the chain stitch here, you're going to put a treble crochet. Then, so we've got our chain, that counts as a treble crochet and 1 chain. I've done 1 into the next one and chain 1. Then we're going to do 1 into the next one and chain 1, and then skip 1 and work 1 all the rest of the way up, and then do a treble crochet. We're going to do a little ladder effect. Chain 1, skip 1 and work the next one. Chain 1. So skip 1, treble crochet, chain 1, skip 1, then do your treble, chain 1 all the way up to the peak. So we're up near the peak, so we're going to skip 1, chain 1 into this last of that cluster. You're going to chain 1, and you're going to put 1 into this chain at the peak. Chain 2, 1, 2, and 1 into that second chain at the peak. You're going to chain 1, and you're going to put 1 into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip 1, and work your way down to near the bottom. Chain 1, skip 1, chain 1, skip 1, all the way down, or down to your last 3 stitches. So down near the bottom, this is where we put 2 in, and then you've got your chain of 4. I do my chain 1. So we're going to skip 1 and put 1 into this last treble here. To chain 1 and put 1 into the 4th chain, the 4th stitch in that chain. To chain 1 and put 1 into the 3rd stitch in that chain. Go to chain 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and turn your work around. So into the chain space we're going to put 2. We're going to repeat row 6. So put 2 into that stitch. We're doing the other side of this ladder. So we're just going to repeat that row there. 1 into each stitch along. 1 into each stitch up to the peak. Remember, 1 into the chain stitch. So we've done a chain, 4, and we turned. We put 2 into the next stitch, then 1 into each stitch all the way up to the peak. So we've been doing 1 into each stitch, and once you're in the peak, put 2 into that stitch, chain 2 and 2 into the next stitch. So 2 into the first stitch in the peak, 1 and 2. You're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and 2 into the next stitch of the peak, or the corner, whatever you're calling it. Then one in all the way down to here. Then we'll put two in. We'll chain one and do one more. So one into each stitch all the way down. And remember your chain stitch. And I'm down at my chain of 4. So into the 4th stitch of this chain of 4, I'm going to put 2 stitches. 1 and 2. This keeps my increase correct. I'm going to chain 1 because we need to chain 1 for doing the clusters. And then into the next stitch, we're going to put 1 treble crochet. You're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4, and we're going to start it all again. We're going to put, that's what we're looking like, really pretty. We're going to do our 5 rows of clusters again. We're going to do 5 rows, and then we'll go back and do this, what I'm calling the ladder row. Your row of your treble crochets, then you skip one, do one, and then your other full row. But just remember those little increases at the beginning and up here. Just rewind the video back, and that's row 8. So we've got row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4 and row 5 are all cluster rows. Then row 6, 7 and 8 are these treble crochet ones. So we're going to go back to row 1 basically to do 5 rows of clusters. So I've got my 4 done, my chain of 4. To the chain stitch, we're going to do our first cluster. I'll do this with you and then you can do your 5 rows. So do your cluster. You're going to chain 1 and skip 3. 1, 2, 3 and do another cluster. So chain 1. So this is row 1 of your clusters. Skip 3. 1, 2, 3. Put your cluster in. Chain 1, skip 3, 1, 2, 3 and put your cluster in. So we're nearly up at the top of the peak and I'm going to skip 1, 2, 3. Now into the first of the chain, I'm going to put my cluster. 1, 2 and 3. And this time we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, because this is a peak, and do a cluster into the second stitch of that peak. 1, 2 and 3. Chain 1, skip 3, 1, 2, 3 and work your way back down. Chain 1, remember your chain 1s. So we're nearly down at the bottom. Do my chain 1, skip 1, 2, 3 and I'm going into the 4th stitch in that chain and do a cluster. I'm going to chain 1 and do 1 treble crochet into the next stitch. Just 1. Then we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 and turn. So that's round 1 of our cluster row done. And you'll go into your chain stitch and do your next cluster. You'll do a cluster into each of your chain stitches. And you'll do that until you've got 5 rows done. So this is what it looks like now with the next 5 rows of the clusters done. And you can see how this little ladder one breaks it up a little bit. Now you can chop and change different stitches if you want. You can do more than 5 rows. And with this you could actually do 2 sets of that and then do your cluster stitch again. I'm going to show you this one again, so that's row 6, 7 and 8. So I'm going to show you how to do this row here again. So that's row 6, and then you can just rewind the video and watch how to do round 7 and round 8. Then you go back to your 5 clusters, and then you'll do round 6, 7 and 8 again, and you'll keep repeating that until it's as big as you want it to be. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do row 6 again. I'm going to show you how to do that one there, and then you'll do row 7 and row 8, then the cluster rows, then row 6, 7 and 8, and then the clusters, and you'll make it as big as you want it to be. So I'm going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4, and turn my work around. Turn my work. Now into the chain stitch we're going to put 2 treble crochets. That's 1 and 2. And this is going to help with our increase. Now you're going to put 1 treble crochet, or that's a USA double crochet, into each stitch, and 1 into that chain stitch there, all the way up to the peak, all the way up to this peak. So when you get up to your point again, into the 2 stitches, you're going to put 2 treble crochets, 2 chain, 1, 2, and another 2 treble crochets into that second stitch and that chain. Then you'll continue down to the bottom, putting 1 stitch into each of the stitches. You'll get down to the bottom, you'll put 2 in that 4th stitch of the chain, chain 1, and then 1 treble crochet into the top of the chain of 3 that you've got left. So I'm back down to my chain of 4. So into the 4th chain, count 1, 2, 3 and 4. You put 2 to do that little increase. Keeps your stitch count correct for when you do your next set of clusters. You want to chain 1 and put 1 into the next stitch down. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. This is row 7 of the pattern. It's the middle row of that second section of the pattern. We're going to do the ladder one. We're going to do this one. It makes it look like a ladder. And then this row is just a repeat of that one. And then you'll do your 5 cluster rows again. So I'll just quickly show you this one again. So that works out as a treble crochet and a chain 1. So into this next one, you're going to do a treble crochet and a chain 1. Into the next stitch, you're going to do a treble crochet, chain 1, and now we're going to start skipping 1. So right at the beginning it's your chain of 4, a treble crochet into that chain stitch there, chain 1 and a treble crochet into the next stitch, chain 1. Then we're going to start skipping a stitch and build our little ladders. So skip a stitch and do a treble crochet into the next stitch, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then treble crochet all the way up to your peak. Skip 1 and treble crochet. So I'm going to skip 1 and put 1 into the chain, the first chain stitch. Chain 2 because it's the peak. I'm going to put 1 into the next chain stitch. Chain 1, then we'll start our skip 1 and work 1 down to the bottom. Down this side. So I'm on my last skip 1 and do 1 in here. Going to chain 1 and go into the 4th stitch in the chain. Chain 1 and 1 into that 3rd stitch in that chain. And that's what we have. And now what you'll do is you'll repeat this row here. So just rewind the video again and repeat that row. And then you'll go back to your 5 rows of clusters. And then just rewind the video and do row 6, 7 and 8 again. So row 7 and row 8 are the same, are just these treble crochets, but remember your increases at the beginning and at the end and up here at this point. And this is what we've got so far. It's really pretty. So I'm going to repeat row 7 again, and then I'll do another 5 rows of my clusters and then do this separation section, these 3 rows to separate the cluster rows. And I'll do quite a bit more and then I'll come back and show you what it's like when it's nearly finished. So I'm on my second skein of yarn. I've rolled it up into a ball like I did this one. Now this is what I've got done so far. Now what I'm going to do is it's going to take me another little while to get this as big as I want it, and I will do an update on this for its full size. Now you can keep doing the 2 sections of the pattern, the 5 of the clusters and the 3 rows of this little ladder one here. You can do as many as you want. You can do all clusters if you want, and this is what it looks like. I'll try and go up a little bit more. So I've put the camera up a little bit more there. I've got my laptop showing in that corner. But this is what it looks like. It is so pretty. It's completely reversible, as you can see. It's completely reversible and it is really pretty. Once I've got this the size I want, I'm going to put a row of UK double crochets along this edge. That is a USA single crochet. I'm going to finish on this row here, this ladder row. So my edge will finish with, it'll be a row of UK treble crochets, and that's double crochets in the USA. So I'll finish my pattern on this one here, and that'll give it a nice straight edge. Thank you very much to James McIntosh for the yarn. It's beautiful, beautiful. And these are all, this is called My Tenderness, and it comes in 24 different colours, and it's what's called a semi-solid because it's hand dyed, and then when it's dried it dries out in different shades of the dye is in different shades, and there's lots of different colours, and it's really worth having a look. And if you want to know again, the hook I'm using is a Lantern Moon, and Lantern Moon is owned by Knitpro, and you can find these ebony, this is ebony wood, and you can find these on James McIntosh's website as well. So I will put a link under the video. So thank you all very much for watching. Watch out for the update once I've got this made up to the size that I want. Keep your eye out for that little update on this when I've done it to its full size. So thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel to be seen on YouTube if you subscribe. It's completely free to subscribe to the channel. And please, if you click on the bell icon, YouTube will tell you when I put up another tutorial, and that way you won't miss any. So until the next time, happy crafting, and I'll see you all again soon. Goodbye.